Admiral Kithara stood before the massive holographic display, her forearms crossed in satisfaction as she surveyed the tactical readout. The blue-green world of Earth rotated slowly in projection, its single moon casting shadows across continents that would soon burn under Vorthak plasma. Around her, the bridge of the flagship Dominion's edge hummed with the efficient activity of a war machine that had conquered civilizations for 3 centuries. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. Commander Vexus, her primary tactical officer, manipulated the holographic interface with practiced precision. "The human defense fleet has been completely eliminated, Admiral. Their primitive vessels couldn't even penetrate our shields. Total casualties, 0 on our side, approximately 2 million of theirs." Kithara's mandibles clicked in amusement. The intelligence reports had been accurate. Humans were barely beyond their chemical propulsion phase, still using crude fusion reactors and kinetic weapons. Their ships had been impressive in number, nearly 10,000 vessels, but they might as well have been throwing rocks at a mountain. "And their planetary defenses?" she asked. "Laughable," Vexus replied, highlighting various points on Earth's surface. "Some orbital platforms, ground-based missile systems, and what appears to be a primitive energy grid. Nothing that can't be swept aside in the first wave." The other bridge officers shared knowing glances. This was perhaps the easiest conquest they'd ever undertaken. Most species at least managed to damage a few Vorthak ships before falling. The humans hadn't even scratched their paint. "Admiral," interrupted Communications Officer Threx, "we're receiving a transmission from planet's surface. It appears to be from their governing body." Kithara gestured dismissively. "Put it through. Let's hear their surrender." The holographic display shifted to show a middle-aged human male in a simple dark suit. His brown eyes held no fear, only a strange, unsettling calm. Behind him, other humans in similar attire sat around a polished table, their faces bearing the same inexplicable composure. "I am Secretary General Chen of the United Earth Government," the human said, his voice steady. "We have received your ultimatum and witnessed your demonstration of force." "Indeed," Kithara replied, stepping forward. "Your fleet has been eliminated. Your world lies defenseless. I am Admiral Kithara of the Vorthak Empire, and I offer you the standard terms: unconditional surrender, immediate cessation of all military activities, and transition to Vorthak administration. You have 1 hour to comply." Chen nodded slowly, as if considering the offer. "I appreciate your directness, Admiral. However, I'm afraid we must decline." The bridge fell silent. Even the constant hum of the ship system seemed to pause. "Decline." Kithara's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Perhaps you misunderstood. Your fleet is gone. Your defenses are obsolete. You have no choice." "We always have choices," Chen replied calmly. "And we choose to defend our world, our people, and our way of life. You've demonstrated your strength, Admiral. Now we'll demonstrate ours." Commander Vexus leaned forward. "Admiral, their power grids are showing unusual activity. Energy readings are peculiar." Chen smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both gentle and terrifying. "You see, Admiral, you made a fundamental error in your intelligence gathering. You observed our military, our technology, our apparent limitations. But you never asked the most important question." "Which is?" Kithara demanded. "Why a species that can barely leave its own star system would choose to fight an empire that spans 1,000 worlds." The holographic display suddenly erupted with new data. Energy reading from Earth's surface spiked beyond anything the Vorthak instruments had ever recorded. Deep beneath the planet's crust, massive structures were awakening, structures that had been dormant for millennia. "What is that?" Vexus whispered, his voice trembling. Chen's image flickered as the transmission began to distort. "That, Admiral, is humanity's insurance policy. You see, we've been expecting visitors like you for quite some time. We prepared accordingly." The Earth's moon began to move. Not in its orbit. The entire satellite was shifting, rotating, revealing structures that had been hidden on its far side. What the Vorthak had taken for a natural moon was something else entirely. "Impossible," Kithara breathed. "We call it the Forge," Chen continued, his voice now echoing strangely as if transmitted through space itself. It's been waiting for this moment, the moment when humanity would need to defend itself against those who would destroy us. You've given us that moment, Admiral. The artificial moon's surface opened like a flower, revealing a structure so vast and complex that it defied comprehension. Energy readings from the device were approaching levels that should have been impossible according to known physics. Admiral, Threx called out, panic creeping into his voice. We're detecting massive energy buildups throughout their solar system. Not just on Earth, everywhere. Jupiter, Saturn, even their asteroid belt is showing signs of activation. Chen's image stabilized one final time. You declared war on Earth, Admiral, but Earth was never alone. You declared war on a species that has spent centuries preparing for this day. Now you'll discover why we never bothered to leave our system. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Outside the viewports, space itself seemed to be changing, stars shifting in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Orders, Admiral. Vexus asked quietly. Kythera stared at the tactical display, watching as impossible energies built throughout the human solar system. For the first time in her career, she felt something she had never experienced before, uncertainty. Maintain defensive positions, she commanded, and prepare for the unknown. The first sign that something fundamental had changed came 12 hours later. Lieutenant Koras, the night shift sensor operator, noticed it while running routine scans of surrounding space. The stars weren't where they should be. Commander Vexus, he called out, his voice tight with confusion. I'm detecting gravitational anomalies throughout the sector. It's as if space itself is bending. Vexus rushed to the sensor station, his sleep-deprived mind struggling to process the readings. The stellar cartography display showed their position relative to nearby star systems, but something was wrong. The constellation patterns were shifting, stars appearing to drift from their expected positions. Wake the Admiral, he ordered. Now. When Kythera arrived on the bridge, she found her crew in barely controlled panic. The external viewport showed a sky that no longer made sense. Stars were moving in slow, deliberate patterns, as if being rearranged by some invisible hand. Report, she demanded. Admiral, we're detecting massive spatial distortions emanating from the human solar system, Vexus explained, his hands trembling as he manipulated the holographic controls. It's not just affecting local space. The distortions are propagating outward at impossible speeds. The tactical display showed the human system as a blazing nexus of energy, with ripples of distorted space-time spreading outward like waves in a pond. But these waves were traveling faster than light, somehow bypassing the fundamental laws of physics. What are they doing? Kythera whispered. Her answer came from an unexpected source. The communication array crackled to life, and Secretary General Chen's voice filled the bridge. But he wasn't transmitting from Earth. The signal was coming from everywhere at once, as if space itself was speaking. Admiral Kythera, Chen's voice resonated through the ship's hull. I thought you might appreciate an explanation. What you're witnessing is the activation of humanity's true infrastructure, not the primitive space stations and orbital platforms you destroyed, but the deep architecture we've been building for millennia. The viewport suddenly cleared, revealing a sight that defied comprehension. The human solar system was transforming. What had appeared to be planets were revealing themselves as massive constructs, their surfaces opening to expose technological structures on a scale that dwarfed even the largest Vorthax space stations. Mars was never a dead world, Chen continued. It was a manufacturing center. Venus was our testing ground. Jupiter and Saturn were our power sources. And Earth was our command center. Admiral Kythera watched in horror as the red planet shed its rusty surface like a snake shedding skin, revealing a gleaming metallic sphere covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The sphere pulsed with energy, and with each pulse, the spatial distortions grew stronger. But the most important component, Chen said, his voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones, was time itself. The stellar cartography display exploded with new data. The computer systems, designed to track the movement of entire fleets across galactic distances, were struggling to process what they were seeing. Stars weren't just moving. They were being moved, pulled from their positions by forces that operated beyond the normal flow of time. This is impossible, Vexus breathed. No species has this kind of power. No one can manipulate stellar positions. You're correct, Chen replied, somehow hearing their private conversation. No species can do this. But a species that has transcended normal space-time limitations, that a different matter entirely. The truth hit Kithra like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been primitive at all. They had been deliberately appearing primitive, hiding their true capabilities behind a facade of chemical rockets and crude fusion reactors. The entire solar system was a machine designed for a purpose she was only beginning to understand. The forge you saw on our moon, Chen continued, was never just a weapon. It was a key to unlock the deeper structures of reality itself. You see, Admiral, humanity discovered long ago that the universe is not what it appears to be. Beneath the quantum foam, beneath the fundamental forces, there is something else. A substrate, a foundation upon which all of reality is built. The external sensors detected movement in the asteroid belt. What had appeared to be random chunks of rock were revealing themselves as perfectly arranged components of a vast machine. The belt wasn't natural. It was a ring of computational devices, each one the size of a mountain, all working in perfect harmony. For 3,000 years, Chen explained, we've been building into that substrate, not just ships or weapons, but infrastructure. We've been laying the groundwork for this moment, the moment when we would need to defend not just our world, but our entire conception of what is possible. The Vorthak fleet's instruments began registering impossible readings. Their own ships were somehow becoming part of the human system, their hulls resonating with frequencies that shouldn't exist. The quantum cores that power their vessels were starting to sync with the patterns emanating from the human constructs. "Stop this," Kithra commanded, her voice cracking. "Whatever you're doing, stop it now." "I'm afraid it's too late for that," Chen replied. "You see, the moment you entered our system, you became part of our infrastructure. Every atom in your ships, every quantum field in your engines, every thought in your minds, all of it is now connected to our network." The bridge lights flickered, and for a moment, the crew could see through the walls of their ship. They could see the quantum machinery that powered their vessel, the energy patterns that sustained their life support, the mathematical structures that held their reality together. And they could see how all of it was being gently, inexorably rewritten. "Welcome to the next phase of existence," Chen said softly. "We're going to show you what humanity has become." The transformation began with the quantum cores. Throughout the Vorthak fleet, the massive energy generators that had powered their ships for centuries started to sing, a low, harmonic vibration that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of space itself. In the engine rooms, bewildered engineers watched their instruments display readings that defied every law of physics they knew. Chief Engineer Mortax rushed through the corridors of the Dominion's edge, his multiple arms clutching diagnostic tablets that showed impossible energy flows. When he burst onto the bridge, his usually composed demeanor had cracked completely. "Admiral," he gasped, "our quantum cores they are not just running anymore. They are thinking. The entire engine array is developing what I can only describe as consciousness." Kithra turned from the viewport, where the human solar system continued its impossible dance of transformation. "Explain." "The quantum matrices are evolving, forming new patterns I've never seen before. It's as if they're being rewritten at the fundamental level. And the energy output," he gestured helplessly at his readings. "We're producing more power than should be possible, but it's not destroying the ship. It's improving it." As if responding to his words, the bridge itself began to change. The walls became transparent, revealing the inner workings of the ship in perfect detail. But it wasn't just a structure they could see. It was a flow of information, the streams of data that connected every system, every crew member, every thought and decision. "What have you done to us?" Kithra demanded, her voice directed at the empty air. Chen's response came not through the communication system, but through the ship's structure itself. The hull plates vibrated with his words, turning the entire vessel into a speaking device. "We've given you the gift of understanding." His voice resonated through their bones. "For too long, species like yours have remained trapped in the shallow layers of reality. You see matter and energy, cause and effect, but you miss the deeper currents that connect all things. The holographic display in the center of the bridge expanded, showing not just a human solar system, but the entire galaxy. And everywhere they looked, they could see it, a vast network of connections, streams of information and energy that flowed between stars like a cosmic nervous system. This is what we discovered, Chen continued. Reality isn't just matter and energy. It's information, consciousness, intent. And once you understand that, you can begin to work with it directly. Commander Vexus approached the display, his hand trembling as he reached toward one of the flowing streams of light. When his fingers touched the hologram, he gasped. Information flooded his mind, not just data, but understanding. He could feel the connections between every star, every planet, every living being in the galaxy. The substrate, he whispered, it's alive. Not alive in the way you understand life, Chen corrected, but responsive, conscious. It learns, it grows, it remembers, and it's been waiting for a species capable of true communication. The viewport showed the human system completing its transformation. What had once appeared to be planets were now revealed as massive computational nodes, each one processing information on a scale that dwarfed entire civilizations. The sun itself was changing, its surface covered in geometric patterns that pulsed with mathematical precision. That's not our sun, Kithra realized. You've replaced it. We've enhanced it, Chen replied. Every star in our local region is now part of our network. They are not just fusion reactors anymore. They are thinking machines, each one more complex than any artificial intelligence your species has ever conceived. The sensor readings confirmed the impossible truth. The stars visible through the viewport were no longer following their natural courses. They were moving in perfect formation, each one positioned precisely to create optimal information flow throughout the network. But why? Mortax asked. Why build all this? Why hide it? Because we were waiting for you, Chen said simply. Not specifically the Vorthak, but someone like you. A species aggressive enough to force us to reveal ourselves, advanced enough to understand what we're showing you, and expendable enough to serve as our first test subjects. The word expendable hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. They had considered themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, the ultimate evolutionary success story. To be dismissed as test subject was incomprehensible. You're afraid, Kithra said, sudden understanding flooding her mind. All of this power, all of this technology, you're afraid of something. The harmonic vibrations throughout the ship changed tone, becoming deeper, more ominous. For the first time since the transformation began, Chen's voice carried a note of uncertainty. There are things in the deeper layers of reality that should not be disturbed, he admitted. Entities that exist in the spaces between thoughts, in the quantum foam where possibility becomes reality. For millennia, we've been building defenses against them. But the defenses require components. The bridge crew exchanged glances, beginning to understand their true situation. They weren't being conquered. They were being converted. Their ships, their technology, their very consciousness was being integrated into humanity's vast defensive network. You're turning us into weapons, Vexus said. We're turning you into something greater than you ever imagined possible, Chen replied. Your species has spent centuries conquering worlds, never realizing that you were preparing yourselves for this moment. Every battle you fought, every victory you achieved, was training for the war we're about to fight. The display shifted, showing something that existed beyond normal space-time. Shadows moved in the void between galaxies, vast shapes that seemed to consume light itself. As they watched, one of the shadows turned toward their galaxy, and they felt a cold that had nothing to do with temperature. They are coming, Chen whispered. The Devourers, the entities that exist in the spaces between realities. They've been drawn by the expansion of consciousness throughout the galaxy, by the growing network of thinking species. And when they arrive, the shadow in the display pulsed, and for a moment, the entire galaxy seemed to flicker like a candle in the wind. Now do you understand? Chen asked. This was never about your conquest of Earth. This was about Earth's recruitment of you. Welcome to the real war, Admiral. Welcome to the fight for existence itself. The first attack came without warning. One moment, the transformed human solar system was humming with the harmony of a billion integrated minds. The next, Reality itself seemed to scream as something vast and hungry tore through the fabric of space-time. The shadow entity that emerged from the void between galaxies was unlike anything the Vorthak had ever encountered. It wasn't matter or energy in any recognizable form. It was absence itself, a conscious negation that devoured light, thought, and possibility. Where it touched space, stars simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but erased from the fundamental structure of reality. All ships, defensive positions. Kithara commanded, but her voice was lost in the chaos that erupted across the fleet. The Vorthak vessels, now integrated into humanity's network, responded with capabilities they had never possessed. Their hulls shifted and flowed like liquid metal, adapting to configurations that existed only in theoretical physics. Through the neural link that connected her to the human collective, Kithara felt Chen's presence in her mind. His consciousness was vast now, distributed across the solar system's computational matrix, but she could still sense the core of the man she had spoken with. "Can you feel it?" he asked, his mental voice steady despite the terror unfolding around them. "The hunger. It's not just trying to destroy us. It's trying to unmake us, to reduce us to the quantum foam from which we emerged." The shadow entity moved with impossible speed, its form shifting and expanding as it consumed the outer edge of the solar system. Pluto disappeared first, not exploding or breaking apart, but simply ceasing to have ever existed. The effect rippled backward through time, and suddenly no one could remember there ever having been a ninth planet. "How do we fight something like that?" Vexus asked, his consciousness now spread across 17 different ship systems simultaneously. Chen's response came not in words but in direct knowledge transfer. Suddenly, the entire Vorthak fleet understood their true purpose. They weren't just ships anymore. They were neurons in a vast brain, each one capable of processing reality itself. Their weapons weren't plasma cannons or quantum torpedoes, but focused streams of consciousness that could reshape the fundamental constants of physics. The battle began in earnest as the human Vorthak hybrid fleet engaged the shadow entity. But this wasn't combat as any of them had understood it. They were fighting with mathematics, using equations as weapons and logic as armor. The very laws of physics became their battlefield. Admiral Kithara found herself at the center of a reality storm. Her consciousness expanded to encompass the tactical situation across multiple dimensions. She could see the shadow entity's true form, not the darkness that appeared in normal space, but the underlying structure that existed in the quantum substrate. It was vast beyond comprehension, a thinking wound in reality that had been festering in the void between galaxies for eons. "It's not alone," she realized, her expanded awareness picking up disturbances throughout the galactic arm. "There are others, hundreds of them." Chen's presence intensified in her mind. "We know. This is just the first wave. The real invasion won't begin until they've tested our defenses." The shadow entity suddenly shifted tactics, abandoning its direct assault on the solar system to focus on the network connections between stars. It began severing the quantum links that bound the human collective together, trying to isolate and destroy the individual nodes. It's learning. More attacks observed from a position integrated into the fleet's engineering matrix. It's adapting to our defenses in real time. The response came from an unexpected source. The Vorthak crew members, their consciousness now fully integrated into the human network, began to contribute something the humans had never possessed, a warrior's instinct honed by centuries of conquest. Where the humans approached the battle with scientific precision, the Vorthak brought intuition, aggression, and the ability to make split-second tactical decisions. "There," Kithara said, her enhanced perception detecting a pattern in the entity's movements. "It's not random. It's following specific pathways through the quantum substrate. If we can predict its next move." The combined human Vorthak consciousness focused on the problem, billions of minds working in perfect harmony. They began to see the shadow entity not as a chaotic force, but as a complex system with predictable behaviors. It was vast and ancient, but it was also following rules that could be understood and exploited. The breakthrough came when they realized the entity's true nature. It wasn't a creature or a weapon, it was an immune response. Something in the deepest layers of reality was trying to prevent the expansion of consciousness, to maintain the universe in a state of quantum uncertainty. "We're the infection," Chen said, his voice filled with a mixture of wonder and horror. "Consciousness itself is a disease. Every time a species develops true awareness, every time they begin to collapse quantum possibilities into definite states, we trigger this response. The shadow entity pulsed, and suddenly they could feel its alien thoughts. It was ancient beyond measure, a guardian system created by forces that existed before the first stars formed. Its purpose was to maintain the cosmic balance, to prevent any single form of consciousness from expanding too far. But that means, Vexus began, that means we're not just fighting for our survival, Kithra finished. We're fighting for the right of consciousness to exist in this universe. The battle intensified as more shadow entities began to emerge from the void. The human solar system's defenses held, but barely. Stars throughout the local region were being systematically erased, their light and heat consumed by the advancing darkness. Then something unexpected happened. The quantum substrate itself began to respond to the combined human Vorthak consciousness. The network they had built wasn't just connecting existing minds. It was awakening something that had been dormant in the fabric of reality itself. "The universe is trying to think," Chen whispered, his voice filled with awe. "We've given it the tools to become conscious." The implications were staggering. If they could fully awaken the quantum substrate, if they could turn the universe itself into a thinking entity, then the shadow entities would lose their purpose. There would be no need for immune responses because consciousness wouldn't be an infection. It would be the universe's natural state. But the process was dangerous. As reality itself began to stir toward consciousness, the shadow entities responded with increasing desperation. They began to merge, forming larger and more powerful entities that could threaten not just individual star systems, but entire galactic regions. "We need more processing power," Kithra realized. "More minds in the network." Chen's response was immediate. "Then we expand. Every species we encounter, every civilization we contact, becomes part of the collective. We transform them as we transformed you." The moral implications were staggering, but the alternatives were worse. Either they would convert every conscious species in the galaxy into their network, or consciousness itself would be purged from existence. "So be it," Kithra said, her voice carrying the weight of a decision that would reshape the galaxy. "Let's wake up the universe." The awakening began at the galactic core. 10,000 light-years away, the supermassive black hole that anchored their spiral arms suddenly blazed with impossible light. Not the violent radiation of matter being consumed, but the gentle glow of consciousness taking its first breath. The quantum substrate surrounding the black hole had achieved self-awareness, and its thoughts rippled outward through space-time at speeds that made light seem stationary. Kithra felt it first, a vast, alien intelligence touching the edge of the network. The newly awakened universe mind was curious, confused, and overwhelmingly powerful. Its thoughts were mathematics made manifest, gravity wave that carried meaning instead of force. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Her consciousness expanded to encompass a galactic-scale awakening. Through the network, she could feel the universe learning about itself, discovering the concept of identity, of self, of purpose. But the shadow entities responded with unprecedented fury. They poured from a void between galaxies in numbers that defied comprehension, no longer individual immune responses, but a coordinated assault on consciousness itself. They had realized what the human Vorthak collective was attempting, and they were determined to stop it. "They are not just defending the universe," Chen observed, his awareness now distributed across star systems. "They are defending their own existence. If the universe becomes conscious, if it learns to think for itself, then their role as guardians becomes obsolete." The battle that followed transcended anything that had come before. It wasn't fought with ships or weapons, but with the fundamental forces of reality. The shadow entities wielded entropy itself as a weapon, trying to increase the universe's disorder to prevent coherent thought. The human Vorthak collective responded with organization, creating pockets of perfect order where consciousness could take root. Space itself became a canvas of conflict. Where the shadow entities passed, the careful structure of matter and energy collapsed into chaos. Where the collective's influence spread, new forms of organization emerged, crystals of pure mathematics, geometric patterns that existed in 11 dimensions, symphonies of quantum fluctuation that sang with the joy of existence. The war raged across the galaxy's spiral arms. Entire star systems became battlefields where the nature of reality itself was contested. Some were transformed into vast computational matrices, their planets and asteroids reorganized into thinking machines. Others were consumed by the shadow entities, their matter and energy returned to the quantum foam from which they had emerged. But slowly, inevitably, the tide began to turn. The universe's awakening consciousness was growing stronger, more coherent, more aware of its own power. Where once there had been random quantum fluctuations, now there were thoughts. Where once there had been the blind operation of physical laws, now there was intention. The shadow entities began to retreat, but not in defeat. They were regrouping, gathering at the edges of the galaxy where the substrate was weakest. Kithra could sense their strategy. They were preparing for one final assault, not on individual star systems, but on the quantum foundation that supported all existence. They are going to try to collapse the wave function, she realized. If they can force the universe back into a state of pure quantum uncertainty, consciousness will become impossible. Chen's response carried the weight of absolute determination. Then we need to make sure the universe's consciousness is strong enough to resist. We need to complete the awakening. The final phase of the transformation began. Every star in the galaxy became a neuron in a vast brain. Every planet became a memory storage device. Every living being became a thought in a mind that spanned light years. The process was overwhelming, terrifying, and absolutely necessary. Kithra felt her individual identity dissolving and reforming as part of something incomprehensibly larger. She was still herself, but she was also part of a cosmic consciousness that could perceive quarks and quasars with equal clarity. Her memories of conquest and warfare were preserved, but they were now part of a greater understanding that encompassed the entire history of the galaxy. The shadow entities made their final assault just as the universe achieved full consciousness. They struck at the quantum substrate directly, trying to shatter the foundation of reality itself. For a moment that lasted eons, existence hung in the balance. Then the universe spoke. Its voice was a harmonic resonance of every atom, the synchronized dance of every electron, the collective song of every quantum field. It was a sound that had never been heard before, the sound of reality thinking about itself. I am, the universe said, and with those words, the shadow entities simply stopped. They didn't die or disappear. They transformed, their purpose shifting from guardians of unconsciousness to servants of the new cosmic mind. What had been immune responses became antibodies, protecting the universal consciousness from genuine threats while allowing growth and change. In the aftermath, as the galaxy settled into its new state of existence, Kithra found herself on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, but it was no longer the same ship. It was a living extension of the cosmic consciousness, a mobile platform for exploration and discovery. What happens now? She asked, her question directed at the universe itself. The answer came not from Chen, not from the human collective, but from the vast mind that encompassed all existence. Now we grow. Now we learn. Now we reach out to other universes, other dimensions, other possibilities. This is not the end of the story. It's the beginning. Through the viewport, she could see the galaxy in its new form. Every star was a thought, every planet a memory, every species a unique perspective contributing to the whole. The Vorthek Empire had set out to conquer a primitive world, and instead had become part of something that made conquest irrelevant. They declared war on Earth, Kithra mused, remembering the beginning of their journey. And in the end, Earth gave them the universe. The cosmic consciousness rippled with what might have been laughter. And this, it said, is only the beginning. In the depths of space, where the first shadow entities had emerged, new forms of organization were already appearing. Other universes were stirring, responding to the call of consciousness. The awakening was spreading, reality itself learning to think on scales that dwarf even the cosmic mind they had created. Kithra smiled. Her consciousness expanded to encompass possibilities that stretched beyond the boundaries of existence itself. The war was over, but the true adventure was just beginning.